we still have a few minutes before we start. But just curious, is there anybody here that is not affiliated with this center? And you have a Buddhist practice, you said, Robert? About?
No, I said I practice meditation, prayer, spiritual practice, but I wouldn't claim to be a Buddhist, although I'm a fellow traveler. So
okay. And is there anybody here who has never meditated at all before? Okay. So we may have some bad habits to break. Usually there's a large percentage of people, even at some of the retreats that I've been doing, 10-day retreats, people will show up, maybe a quarter of the group has never meditated before.
Wow.
And that's
awesome.
That's good. I like that. Everybody has a chance to, because we all basically are starting at the same spot. So what do you think? Are we ready to go? Okay. So because this is Vajra Mudra Center, and almost all of you are affiliated with the center, and okay, we might have to turn off the fan or turn it down a little bit or something. It's going to be a fine balance between overheating and needing an amplifier.
Tomorrow they say maybe a little cooler.
Oh.
I think the AC will kick in and we'll be freezing soon.
So anyway, because we are at Vajra Mudra Center, and when I'm at yoga centers, I don't have an opportunity to do this, but it's something that is always a pleasure and delight, and will make the teaching go better for me. I'd like to just do my thing here and prostrate to our great lineage and our teachers, people that I owe so much to, and to people that I'll be referring to, some of these people, especially Jason Powell. So that's about the last overtly Buddhist thing you'll see or hear today. Because I don't really, should start this also. I'm going to be recording also just for a backup. So these days, except in very special circumstances, I don't really think of myself as a Buddhist teacher. I think of myself as an investigative reporter. And so instead of these days, instead of my beat being state legislature or Seattle City Hall or environmental politics, my beat is the phenomena of consciousness. And one of the stories that interests me most on that beat these days is a system of training your attention to place your attention where you choose and to sustain that attention there. This is a system called Sharmatha, 2,500-year-old system, invented by Lord Buddha and practiced and refined over 100 generations of meditators. So everywhere I go, it's interesting to just examine the story in a little different light, because every place is different in some way. So New York City is different than Vancouver, is different from Los Angeles, is different from Asheville, and that's certainly different than Cape Ann. But what I notice are also the similarities between these places. So the world is a much different place. We live in an interdependent ecosystem, you could say. And this is what I really notice, is this interdependence everywhere we go, or everywhere I go. And there's an interdependence of this outer ecosystem, you might call it, the ecosystem that we inhabit, that, in many ways, Patanjali and Lord Buddha, who invented these systems, and the one that Buddha really, I think, developed and then refined a system that already existed, and then Patanjali really wrote on that. But there are elements of this ecosystem that they would still recognize. There are still many of the species of plants, even though there are so many plants and animals disappearing every year. But a large part of the exterior ecosystems, especially here, rocky coastline, oceans, atmosphere, sunshine, the maple trees, all of that stuff, not all that much changed in 2,500 years. But there is something that is really dramatically changing very quickly, and even more quickly than the environment, and that is what I'm beginning to think of as the mental ecosystem. And this is an interdependence of both these exterior elements that the Buddha and Patanjali might still recognize, and something that they would certainly not recognize, and that is this constant connection to media streams that we have now. What I'm beginning to recognize, and what research is beginning to bear out, is that there is a new player in this mental ecosystem of ours. And I'm beginning to think of this as something that is every bit as underreported, as potentially dangerous, as inexorable, and something that seems also, like climate change and global warming, to be something that to inspire the kind of despair and dread that by the time that we've discovered the problem, it may already be too late to do much about it. So that element, what is that element in our new mental ecosystem? That element, playing the role of CO2 in our mental ecosystem, is multitasking. So it's startling to think about how recently this new player in our mental ecosystem has arrived. So in 2007, when Barack Obama was starting his first run for the presidency, the iPhone hadn't even been launched yet. So you can think of that. I know here in Massachusetts, I guess it's a Canadian company, BlackBerry, but BlackBerry users might dispute it, but it was the iPhone that really launched the popular use of the smartphone. And so now, only 6 years later, more than a third of smartphone users report that they get online before they get out of bed. They go to bed with their phones, and when they wake up with insomnia in the middle of the night, they'll check a Facebook post or else post about how difficult a night they're having sleeping. So a third of getting on before they get out of bed. Americans now, largely because of this invention of the smartphone and now iPads and tablets, and most of our work now involves computers. The average American spends 8 hours a day interacting with a screen of some sort. That is more time than spent in any other activity, including sleeping. the average teenager processes 1,700 texts a month. In the average college class, 50-minute college course or class, the average student will be sending or receiving 11 texts. So this is, before it's too late, we need to determine whether this is beginning to have any long-term effect on our ability to sustain our attention on an object that we choose to place our attention on. And so the research is just beginning to come in because the whole issue is so new that it's just the ramping up the research and getting the funding for it and publishing results. It's just happening in the last year or so, but there seems to be a very broad consensus that the brain is impossible. It's impossible for the brain to do two complex tasks at once. And so this is something that Buddhists have known for a long time, and contemplatives. But for complex tasks, what you can do is toggle your attention very quickly. And we'll talk more about how quickly that can be. But so this gives rise then to the illusion that it is possible to do two things at once. And so some of the research that's just coming in now, for instance, a study at the University of Washington released last year indicated that multitaskers actually believe that they're more efficient at the tasks that they're doing. However, when the efficiency is measured, the drop-off can be as much as 40%. This is enormous, isn't it? For complex tasks, every time the attention leaves the task and shifts to another task, the attention has to reboot the cognitive rules for that task. And so there's hi, welcome. There's a seat right in the middle here too, if you'd like to take that.
This is fine.
Okay. So the loss can be up to 40%, even though, so it's such a huge drop-off in efficiency, but the great illusion is that we think that we're more efficient. And this could be why employers also seem to be, giving people multiple tasks to do at the same time, and that just seems to be part of the work environment as far as I hear anyway. So let's see, what else is going on here? So two Stanford cognitive scientists published a study in December that part of the effect is that heavy multitaskers find it very difficult to prioritize information. So they find it very difficult to create a hierarchy of importance for information. So you could be working on an important project that has a deadline of 1 p.m. in the afternoon. You have a meeting and you have to deliver a report, and all of a sudden you hear a ping of the inbox. That has the same importance as the task that you're working on, and your attention is dragged off to see, what whoever it was that needed to contact you had to say about that. They also find that multitaskers have diminished powers of mental organization and actually have more difficulty switching between tasks than non-multitaskers. And something that all parents are reporting concern about these days, and educators, and I have know teachers who are lamenting big change in the last 2 years about study habits, and parents are reporting also this whole new phenomena of media multitasking. So while they're doing their homework, students are sometimes have study groups, so they're Skyping while doing homework, And then somebody is posting a new YouTube video or something during the study session, and on and on. So just what probably many of us did when we were students, we listened to music. And it depends on the type of music, or do other things. But with media multitasking, what's found is that students understand less, and they're less able to apply what they have been able to learn to different contexts from which they've learned it. So there's like a state-dependent learning that goes on. They also then memory memory deficiencies are showing up. So for old people, when we begin to, this happens to us, what we believe is that the memory is there, but we just can't access it. It's right on the tip of my tongue, and then a moment later we do access it. But what's happening now with this younger population is that because of the interference with the memory encoding during the task, the memory is just not formed in the first place. So these are all very important things to consider about this new mental ecosystem of ours. There's also something that is showing up in the research, and that is that, hi Bob, every time that your attention switches to a new task, there's a pulse of stress hormone that's released. So this is contributing to what a lot of psychologists are seeing as this phenomena of a constant high arousal that we see in people now, and makes it very difficult for people to relax and for people to fall asleep at night. So this was probably adaptive, at some time during our history when you were drinking at a water hole and you heard a twig snap behind you, like, fight or flight, I'm ready. But now that same sort of arousal happens every time that you hear the chirp of a text message arriving. So it's just constant arousal, arousal, arousal. And you're really beginning to see how this is, why this has become such an important part, and such the milieu, invisible milieu that we're swimming in these days. The commercial propaganda is pretty strident and over the top and outrageous. One of the ones that I can't help but notice, I don't own a television, and I don't own much these days, but certainly I don't own a television. But when I do, so it's odd that the few times that I have seen TV, there's one commercial that keeps popping up. And that is a commercial for AT&T 4G LTE. And so there's a whole series of these commercials. But the one that really gets my attention is you've got a guy in a black suit sitting among a group of preschoolers, or it might be kindergartners. So they're sitting on low chairs, and the guy in the black suit says, in a chirpy voice, "What's better, doing two things at once or one?" And all of the kids chorus back as if they, are trained, doing two things is better than one. And then one of the boys who looks like he has ADHD says, "I can wave my hand and shake my head at the same time." And then the voiceover at the end of the commercial is, "It's not complicated. Doing two things at once is better than one." So that's the kind of insidious propaganda that we're getting, and there's a big commercial reason for that. And so we need to figure out whether the guy in the black suit is right or not. Is it better to do two things at once rather than one? So we can all do our own experiments and recall our own memories. I have never been much of a gardener most of my life, even though I was born on a farm. But in the last couple of years, I have been living with this old gentleman in Twist.